Hello and welcome on into episode 107 of the Wise Guys podcast with the NBA finally getting their NBA Finals matchup, the Miami Heat versus the Denver Nuggets. I should put on my Jokic jersey, shouldn't I? But I won't for a couple more days. I guess I should say a week. But we also have much more to discuss. Bob Myers stepping down from the Warriors, what the NBA Finals will look like. We'll preview that some, and then we'll move on to Finals on Thursday here. Brandon, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's a beautiful day. Had a great night of sleep. Woke up in a happy mood. You don't get those very often. And yeah, I'm ecstatic, to be honest with you. A lot of energy was drained from me because of the last 24 hours. You want to call it less than 24 hours? But I'm just so happy, so thrilled, so proud of this team this year. We're going to get into it, but thank God, honestly, thank God. Cause I really don't, I would have been here, if that happened, but I wouldn't have been in a great mood. I don't know how I would have handled it. I might have thrown a temper tantrum like a child, but I am just so thankful that we are not the 1 in 151.
Well, yeah, not only that, but Jimmy Butler's rocking his new brand, Hemi Buckets. He's going to launch his own beverage and clothing line. And I think with a performance like this postseason, it wasn't just Jimmy that deserves the praise, but I feel like Caleb Martin, who was one vote away from Eastern Conference, Larry Bird Award, whatever you want to call it, this was one of the most shocking developments I've ever seen as an NBA fan. You have a guy that goes from being waived by the Charlotte Hornets 2 years ago, starts working out with J. Cole in the offseason, then gets a job with the Heat, is on a non-guaranteed contract, and then in the playoffs, doesn't play particularly well last year, but then he gets an extension worth $7 million a year. This year in the playoffs, he's the second best player in the Heat offensively, and he's honestly the reason why they go to the conference finals, because without Caleb, I don't think Jay would be able to do this on his own, man.
No, he's been the most consistent player in this Eastern Conference Finals. Jimmy had games 1 and 2, and then Game 7 was pretty good. He didn't shoot incredibly well, but he had to take a lot of shots to get it done. But yeah, to shout Caleb Martin, so many guys to thank on this team. I mean, to shout out to Caleb Martin. You want to start there? You spoke on it a little bit, but just look at the move. So everybody in the offseason, John, right, or coming into the season said that losing PJ Tucker was going to be a disaster for the Miami Heat. And lo and behold, blessing in disguise, one door closes, another one opens. Enter Caleb Martin. Like you said, where would we be without Caleb Martin in these playoffs? Probably not in the NBA Finals. So I mean, I'm ecstatic. This kid has just gained so much respect and the admiration he is getting from the NBA community is well earned and deserved because he's balling. The 3-point shots now. I mean, you could even hear it in the crowd last night when Caleb Martin was taking a 3-point shot. The crowd would just go because they knew it was wet. They knew it was wet like water. Shout out Cash Nasty.
Wasn't just that. The baseline mid-range shots, he shot 72% in the conference finals in mid-range, and then 72% at the rim for the entire playoffs. You know, he wants to talk about the Heat's fluky shooting. He shot 44% from downtown, while averaging 14 points on 71% 2-point shooting.
Yeah, listen, the shots were falling from all over the court. I mean, his ability to finish at the rim too is so freaking good. Like his ability to maneuver around contact and everything. The jelly finishes are just beautiful. That that's the razzle dazzle stuff. But this he's got it. He's got it. Like I said, I think I said like a week or two ago. He's not just a role player. He's not an all-star. I don't think so. Maybe if he balls out in the NBA Finals, we might have to start having a conversation about that. But I tweeted this. I am so thankful that we have him for at least one more year. Because if he was a free agent this year, John, I don't think we afford him because he's probably getting 20 million plus a year from a team. But yeah, to go down the line, I mean, Jimmy, I basically called him out after game 6. I don't think we didn't film a show between game 6, right? We didn't film a show after game 6. I don't think so.
We did. This is
We
where
did?
you said, I have the clip. I can even pull it up.
Oh, we did. Okay. I guess I just eliminated from that my mind because it was so depressing and everything. But yeah, I said Jimmy needs to come out more aggressive in the first quarter, and he did. He didn't score a bunch of points, but he came out and the whole Miami Heat team showed a lot more aggression. I know the Tatum. We'll get into the Celtics side of it, I guess, in like a little bit. But I loved the energy from the Miami Heat team. A big thing about this series, I think the Celtics, the stat is they took 62 or 63 more threes than the Miami Heat in the entire Eastern Conference Finals. But we shot 40% from three. I don't know the Celtics amount. I would imagine it's probably low 30s, but
They shot 30%. You guys shot 43%.
43%. Okay, so it's even better. Thank you. But that for me, that speaks to quality over quantity. I mean, you saw last night, the Celtics shot 42 threes and Miami kept it very low. I think it was 28 or something like that. Quality over quantity. That's a major thing. There's so many teams nowadays in the NBA that fall in love with the just shoot up as many 3-pointers as you can. They go to the D'Antoni system, jack up threes because odds are they're going to start falling into something if you've got a good 3-point shooter and 3 is more than 2, blah, 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 et cetera, right? But Miami has taken that to, we'll shoot our threes. We'll take a good number of threes, right? But we're going to find the right 3. We're going to use ball movement to get to the 3. Like a lot of the Celtics offense is more like, especially Brown and Tatum, it's my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. They don't really know how to play with each other. While Miami, go ahead.
It's drive and kick dependent.
The Celtics?
Yeah.
A lot of it. Yeah. It's just, it's very, I heard this comparison. It is kind of OKC, Westbrook, KD-esque, where it's just, tit for tat. Like they didn't really ever learn how to truly play with each other and mesh like like a Clay and Steph. I know that's a major comparison because these guys are just like match made in heaven, but the Miami Heat, while they aren't the more talented team, John, they are the better basketball team. And they play basketball at a higher level than the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat play better basketball than the Boston Celtics. They play at a much higher level than the Boston Celtics. And we saw that. I know we had that 3 games, spell where we lost the 2, 4 and 5. And then 6 was just a gut wrencher, snatched heart. I literally said heart snatched from my chest. And that was I was scared a little bit, to be honest with you. There was not nerves, but after that moment, it was crap. That's a very hard defeat to come back from the way you lose. Cause it is you feel like, oh, damn, we didn't get them. And now it's like we have to muster up even more for a game 7. But a lot of teams would have faltered, where a lot of teams would have crumbled under that pressure. Coach Spo, Godfather Pat Riley, leader of the team Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and crew, Heat culture shined bright. And history is being made, and I can't wait for the NBA Finals. One thing I do got to say is I am so happy. Well, no, there's not happiness, but this is more of a somber, like a sad, disappointed note that this Miami Heat team, this is a reality. This Miami Heat team is only going to be remembered if they blew that 0-3 lead or if they win the championship. There's no in between. If they lose to Denver, they will not be remembered. And that is the sad truth of the NBA because of the ring culture we are in.
The ring culture is a little bit, in my opinion, ludicrous because only one team can win a championship at the end of the season. And this Miami Heat team, they often get compared to the 1999 Knicks that were the eighth seed in a 50-game season and made it to the finals. It ultimately then lost to the Spurs. There is a
John.
difference between this Miami Heat team, though, and that Knicks team.
Oh.
That Knicks team didn't have their season start up until February 5th.
Thank you. Yeah, can you say it again for the people in the back?
That Knicks team did not play their first game in the season up until the 5th of February.
Yep. Lockout. Shortened season.
And so their 27-23 record was a smaller sample size. This Miami Heat team, throughout the entire regular season, was one of the most confusing teams to evaluate because for a squad of guys, mostly renowned or at least quality three-point shooters, didn't make any three-point shots. Then in the last 2 months of the season, last month and a half, I should say, they start to make the shots, but they're putting more offensive-minded personnel on the floor, so their defense has taken a noticeable decline. They go into the play-in tournament, get blown out by the Atlanta Hawks, who are implementing a new system with a head coach they had just hired in February, then go into Chicago, or maybe Chicago is going to Miami, whatever it was, and it wasn't up until Max Strus delivered a 7 3-point performance that they just barely got into the playoffs. This Miami Heat team was mere minutes away from missing the playoffs altogether, one of the highest payrolls in the NBA. But in one single quarter, they shifted their entire season from missing the playoffs altogether to going to the NBA Finals. That is why they're better than that Knicks team in 99. It's a more impressive story, and it's honestly the most improbable playoff run we have ever seen.
1,000%. I mean, and they've proved it that Chicago win was not even a fluke because I'm pretty sure this Miami Heat team, this run, they have the best record. I forget what the stat is, but when they're down 10 plus points at any point in the game this playoffs, they have the best record in the NBA against the other teams. I know I'm probably butchering that stat, but you get what I'm trying to say. They come back. They come back. It doesn't matter. You could go look at some of the Bucks games where the Bucks had them dead to rights, and they're able to come back and close the door. You can look at the some of these Celtics games that have come. You can never count this Miami Heat team out. It's and I've spoke about it the entire playoff run. The fight, the grit, the want to, the will of this team is unquestionable. And it's honestly unmatched because I don't know. I don't know if another team, player, coach, or whatever could do what's happening right now. It's you speak about the Knicks. I looked at the teams that they had to go through. You know, they had the Miami Heat, the 1 seed, but again, the whole season was confuzzled because of the lockout. Miami probably would have never been the actual 1 seed. And I know they had Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway, but that wasn't an elite team. Then they had to go through the Hawks, I believe. And then they had to play Indiana in the Eastern Conference Finals, which is the one where you like give them kind of like the tip of the hat. Okay, you beat a Reggie Miller led team. That's really good. But other than that, that wasn't an impressive run, really. This run is, and you didn't even mention this, John, either. In your little diatribe going through it, they're doing this all without their second best scorer and a key defender. Like this, they're doing this all without Tyler Hero and Victor Oladipo. That's again another improbable thing. Both times those guys went down, everybody went, well, you know, this is probably it. One time when Jimmy went down, this is probably it. It never happened, never wavered. The team's confidence never. Spo, after game 6, they lose. He says, I don't know how we're going to get it done, but we're going to go up there and we're going to get it done. I wish we could play this game right now. Right now, he said. The confidence.
They proceed to book their flight to Denver shortly then after, which is a move that is for my Pittsburgh Steelers that backfired in the
Yeah, which
2003
I don't like. I
AC
didn't like that
Championship game.
report. I didn't like that report simply because the past 3 games, all I heard from my Miami Heat team, players, coach, and listen, that's their confidence, and I love it, but is we're gonna get it done. We're gonna get it done. We're gonna get it done. And after 3 straight losses, you kind of go, I don't want to hear it anymore. I just want to see it be done. And they did it, and they did it in insane fashion that I did not see was possible. I didn't see a blowout either side coming. I didn't see a blowout.
And the reason we did, Brandon, was because first play of the game, Jason Tatum comes off closeout, lands on Gabe Vincent's ankle, and it felt like for the rest of the night he couldn't really jump or play at the highest level we expect from him. And now I know a lot of people look at an injury like this and they say, "Oh well, of course the Celtics lost the game." The issue that I have with the Celtics, and this is something I've had a gripe all postseason long, I don't know if the Celtics can move forward with Jaylen Brown as their number 2. Because when you look at the entire NBA, contenders and teams that actually get it done, very seldomly does your number 2 have no playmaking skill. And when I watched Jaylen Brown play from his second year in the league in 2018 to 2023, his growth as a passer has been marginal. And it's not just that he had a wrist and a hand injury that limited him to 20% 3-point shooting in this postseason run, truly ugly numbers. It was the fact that I think Jaylen Brown has actually regressed. Now, when you look at the box score, this year he averaged a career high in points at 27 per game. He averaged 7 rebounds. Jaylen Brown is fantastic for a team that is looking to get into the playoffs. And in the second rounds, he will continue to be one of the best players on the floor. But in order for the Celtics to get to where they want to go, I think we have seen too many different series where he has underperformed and or he and Jason Tatum have not played well together. And I think a lot of Celtic fans ask the question, why do they seldomly just not play at the same level consistently? And I think it's because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown do the same exact things, but Brown does it at an inferior level, and he's also not a complementary player to Tatum. There are certain moments where he makes the right read. He's quick, and he's actually passing well. But then in a game 7, he has 8 turnovers, goes 1 of 9 from 3-point range, and along the way, he fails to communicate defensively. I'm okay with Jaylen Brown having 8 turnovers if we're actually going to talk. Like, if you and I are defending a ball screen, Brandon, and I don't say a single word to you, and then we let up a wide open 3, multiple possessions in a row, there'd probably be something wrong with me. And yet when Jaylen Brown does that, we continue to prop him up as one of the best two-way players in the league, though he never communicates defensively. I'm not asking you to be a vocal leader. I'm asking you to do the simple things. He's turnover prone. He's foul prone on both ends of the floor. And I think for a team that has to pay their 2 stars 35% supermaxes this offseason, you have to ask yourself the question, is it worth committing 70% of our payroll to these 2 guys when they're repeatedly running into the same exact issues every single postseason?
Well said. Listen, as the guy who's been kind of on Jaylen Brown's side since the start of the show, I am a Jaylen Brown fan, but I have to be honest and say I think he's shown us who he is, and that is a number 2. Because when asked, Jason Tatum gets injured on the very first play. From there on out, basically a couple minutes into the game, you can realize, like, okay, Jaylen Brown, this is why you're on the team. If your lead star is struggling, injured, or whatever the case may be, this is why we have you. This is why we pay you the big bucks. We believe you can take the place and bring us to the promised land. You failed badly. 8 for 23, 8 turnovers. You still haven't fixed the handle problems of going left. It's obvious. I don't think it's a skill set thing. I think it is more probably a mental game, because we got to remember too, sports is a very big mental game. And when you're thinking about it too much and you're not, just like I said with Jimmy, when Jimmy was not going and being aggressive, I said he's in his own head. He's thinking too much. Sometimes you just got to go out there and ball. Just hoop. Just hoop. Don't even think. It should be natural. Flow. Like the great Bruce Lee said, be like water. Just flow. And sometimes these players get it's so I am with you. Jaylen has it's disappointing. It sucks. Not saying he's not a great player. He still is a great player. He's an all-star. He's a star caliber player still. He just isn't a superstar, which is fine. But John, here's something that was interesting, right? I thought back to one of the first things I said when we started this podcast. I feel like one of the first things I ever said, because we did this right after the finals. And I feel like the question was posed, what happened? How did the Celtics lose and whatever? And I believe one of the first things I ever said was turnovers, turnovers, turnovers. If we remember last year, Jason Tatum had 100 turnovers in the playoffs. The second highest was Jaylen Brown by a wide margin, but still. And this year it came again. The turnovers for both guys were apparent the entire series. They can't get the handle of the ball. Something about them where listen, guys, you guys are good enough shooters, basically. It's time to get in the lab and just focus on the handles or something. I don't know what it is. All right. If it's more mental, then sports psychologists are out there. Go see one. It can help. And that's not a shot. That's just, fact. It can help a lot. Another thing, for their struggles at home, John, I don't blame the Boston crowd, because if anybody was listening to reports or people that were there last night, before the game, they were comparing it to a college atmosphere. That crowd was raucous. They were ready to go. When you come out and I think you missed your first 12 three-pointers.
It was outside.
You kill the crowd. The crowd was trying. Every time that they made a little bit of 5-0 run, 6-0 run or whatever, even though there was a big lead, the crowd would get into it. And then one step forward, 3 steps back. The crowd can't get into it. It's not Boston's, the fans' fault. They are still a great fan base and a great crowd. The players have to take more accountability. I don't even think it's a lot of Mazzulla's fault. Obviously, he takes culpability too, because like I said, if you ain't the solution, you're part of the problem. I don't think he should be fired.
No way.
I do think things will probably be reworked. I think Jaylen Brown is probably going to be the guy that they go look. I don't know what the trade is. It better not be James Harden, because that's
hell no. But I've got a couple trades for you.
Okay,
God no, James Harden.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I should not use God's name in vain when the sentence is including James Harden. No way. Okay. So the first trade idea I have is one that involves the Portland Trailblazers.
Okay, Damian Lillard.
Jaylen Brown is the perfect star. But when you're trying to go to the NBA Finals, I do not think when you're trying to win a championship, though, I do not think Jaylen and Jason is the complementary fit that supports one another's weaknesses.
Yes.
But the Portland Trailblazers are just trying to get into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They want to move the 3rd overall pick. And if you think about what's going to happen with the 2nd pick, the Hornets are rumored to take Brandon Miller. Mm-hmm. Scoot Henderson is one of the best point guard prospects in recent memory. Mm-hmm. He is basically De'Aaron Fox and John Wall's physique. Mm-hmm. At 19 years old, he's built like a boulder, and he's going to be a much better playmaker with a clear strength and pick and roll as a shooter. What do you think about Jaylen Brown to Portland for the 3rd overall pick, the right to select Scoot Henderson, while Portland will also give up Yusuf Nurkic, bad center, bad contract, but then also Cam Reddish as well to make the salaries work?
I don't think Boston would want Nurkic because they already have Horford and Williams.
Right.
That's see, I would I mean, it looks all right, but I think Nurkic is going to be the holdup. To be honest with you, for the Celtics, they wouldn't want that. And also, you gotta look. I know Scoot is obviously not even just Scoot. Prospects in general, they're the shiny new toy. We don't know what they are. We're very hopeful when talking about them, but we got to remember We know what Jaylen Brown is, basically, right? And he's a very good player. So you got to be sure. You got to be sure, or you are going to be in a worse spot than you already are. But continue.
Right. And part of the idea behind this is Nurkic is really one of the worst contracts. He's going to be owed $70 million, 55 after this year for 3 seasons, and he does nothing outside grab rebounds and put up empty filler points. But the idea is that the Celtics don't want to commit everything to 2-star players because the new CBA really does inhibit any team that wants to go $17.5 million over the cap. And for the Celtics, they would be going well over that. So you wouldn't be able to use the mid-level exception. You wouldn't be able to sign players and buyouts. If you want to make a trade, you can't aggregate 2 contracts to get to $25 million. You can't even trade a pick in 7 years if you want to upgrade a certain player. So there's also a couple of more things from the ownership. They pay more. I think the idea is Scoot Henderson won't be making 15, he'll be making $8 million early on. And that allows them to maintain that core. And maybe they make a couple moves. Maybe you package Yusuf Nurkic and Malcolm Brogdon and you get yourself a win off the bench. That's the idea behind it. After that, there really aren't many trades people will like. Bradley Beal, Denny Avila, he's 3 years older than Jaylen, 4 years older. Like, that's the next best offer.
Yeah, see, I think that you get into the same stratosphere of they kind of they're like scorers. They're straight scorers. Like, you kind of want, a playmaker, scorer, or a big man.
To Beal's credit, nobody watches Washington. I don't watch Washington, but I have watched some Bradley Beal. Over the last 3 years without John Wall, he's grown into a good playmaker on the ball, but he hasn't been supported with a number 1, which would allow him to play the more ideal role. I think of Bradley Beal as an upgraded version of Chris Middleton. Better defender, better shooter, better decision maker, maybe good enough passer.
Yeah,
he averaged 7 assists per game.
Yeah, you see how though Middleton has Giannis, which he does a completely different skill set than Middleton. So that's what I'm saying. Like, they got to be different usually. Like, it doesn't usually when 2 guys do very similar things, it doesn't really work that well. That's what I'm trying. We got to think of like a point guard or a center really to get for. So it would never happen, but like an Embiid would be, obviously, right? Or name me a point guard, De'Aaron Fox or Damian Lillard, right? All these guys, like that would be the more ideal route you would want to go towards.
Yes. I think the ultimate end game though here is the Celtics are going to give Jaylen Brown a $295 million extension this summer if he wants to accept it. If he does not accept it, he is going to be traded because there's just 1 year left in his contract. And if that is the case, I think the end game is that they make a move for the Portland Trailblazers for A, the 3rd pick in Scoot Henderson, or B, let's say the Hornets take Scoot 2nd overall. They make a call to Charlotte, say, we'll give you Brown. We'll take the last year of Gordon Hayward's contract. You give us a 2nd overall pick. Now you get an established wing to purple LaMelo Ball. Worst case scenario, if the Blazers really want to keep that 3rd pick, you say, give us Anthony Simons, who's kind of a baby version of Dame, a light version of Dame, and then Shaedon Sharpe, who's going to be a superstar, I think, in 4 or 5 years, but it's also very, very early for a 19-year-old to say that. Whatever the Celtics decide to do, it's going to mean, well, I think they may have already missed their best shot to win a championship. I think their best opportunity was each of the last 2 seasons. But because Brown and Tatum didn't play well enough together at the peak of it, now you've reached the apex and you're starting to go down the hill. And the quicker they can start to slow that down, the sooner they'll be able to adjust the roster, because to get something they never had, you have to do something you've never done. And I do not think Jaylen Brown will be the 2nd best player on the Celtics team to win a championship. And what that comes down to is his lack of development in key areas like communication, ball handling, and passing. Until he develops one of those 3 things to a higher enough level, unless Jason Tatum takes that massive jump next year, I don't think Boston's going to have enough juice in the tank. I don't think they'll be able to go over the hump, man.
I would just say I disagree with that simply because looking at the lay of the land for next year, it's still as open as it was this year. And while I did say I think they've shown us what they are and that they don't really match up as well, even though they were, 2 games away from winning an NBA championship last year. I do think that they can, like, the Sixers are kind of in disarray right now. Um, the Bucks are getting older. We've lamented on their issues. Miami, can they do this again? We have no idea. And then there's Boston, and Cleveland is still young, and I think we've seen a lot of Cleveland's problems, and they have to assess a lot of their problems. So I still think Boston. You look at all those teams; they're going to be a top 4, top 2 team next year in the East, even if they stay completely the same. So I would say no, they're not done. But I would honestly say right now I'm sitting at 50-50. The Celtics are going to make a move this offseason because I really starting to think about it. I really can see them staying pat and being like, no, let's do this again next year. Because, we got to say Malcolm Brogdon was a non-factor last couple of games, actually, when he got injured early in the series. Right. He shouldn't even have been playing last night. He was obviously he missed all of his shots. He was a non-factor. And he was a big addition to the Celtics team. Grant Williams, I think, is a free agent. He's going to be gone. I highly doubt he's going to be able to come back. I don't think they're going to be able to afford him. No. And I don't know the other contract situations like Al Horford and Rob Williams, but
they're locked up for the next.
Yeah, I would imagine they're locked up. So if they make a move, it's either going to be, I could either see them moving Smart or Brown, or both. But if not, they're going to stay pat, and I think they'll still be a top 2 team next year in the East.
They will be. It's not a matter of how many games they win. It's a matter of how far they go. And that is why I say I think we've seen the best version of the Boston Celtics. Now, a team that is in a similar...
Oh, you know what? Wait. All right, something... I don't think it's a good move, but because Chris Paul, they're looking to move on. Marcus Smart for Chris Paul, maybe?
They're going to have to pay Chris Paul $30 million next year. So I would say...
That's what I'm saying. I think Smart's got a pretty good contract, too. That's what I'm saying.
Right. It's a little bit under 20. I would say no, because Marcus Smart brings more, and he's more durable. So
yeah, he's more durable.
I'm actually going to talk about the Warriors here, but instead I want to give a brief NBA Finals preview. So the finals start on Thursday, June 1st this year, and I think there's a couple of really exciting matchups because first and foremost, Bam Adebayo's post-ups were disgusting in the Eastern Conference Finals. I never want to see that again. He was averaging at 0.2 points per post possession, which is, for reference, about a third of the league average in points per possession, so hideous. But one thing Bam exceeded in was what he's always succeeded in the playoffs, and that has been his defense. Nikola Jokic has run through the NBA, the postseason. No one's really been able to stop him. But I think the most interesting matchup is Bam Adebayo guarding Nikola, where he gives up 2 inches and probably 15 to 25 pounds. But in the mid-range area, he's probably the most versatile defender in the Eastern Conference, and a lot like Draymond Green. Not as quick in his reactions, but they have similar skill sets. And Nikola Jokic historically has struggled with bigs that are good post defenders, but are also able to switch, hedge ball screens, and don't necessarily have a weakness you can pinpoint. Do you think Bam can hold Jokic to like 48% shooting here in the finals? Because that's what Rudy Gobert did to him in the first round. And I think looking at this matchup, looking at the series, the most important matchup will be how well Bam is able to defend Nikola.
Yeah, first I would say, well, on paper or on face value, it's Bam versus Nikola. It's more like Bam with Eric Spoelstra, a genius in the film room behind him too, dialing up all those zone coverages, mixing, matching. Honestly, they're not even like true, like what you would use the name for zone coverage. We just rotate so freaking well, and it's like outstanding. It's so beautiful to watch, honestly, how we are able to how awesome it is as a fan of a team when you look like you're giving up an open shot and they're doing the ball movement thing where you're like, oh, here comes, they're kicking it around to an open shooter, and your team is able to rotate so well and stymie that offensive. It's just so awesome. I love that feeling. I just wanted to say that. But I think I don't know honestly what I think, John, because I have no idea what's going to happen, how it's going to look. Because Nikola has faced a very different, array of defenders this playoffs. Cat, Rudy,
Okay.
Aiton, and then AD, Rui, and LeBron, kind of, right? And they all presented their own different things. I really don't. It's going to be a very interesting. I think you hit the nail on the head that's going to be the keyest matchup. I would imagine Spo, Bam, and Jimmy and everybody else for that matter are in the film room right now, studying the hell out of the Denver Nuggets, getting ready. They only have 2.5 days basically to get ready.
Yeah.
That is going to be a very interesting matchup that I do not have an answer for because
This is where losing PJ Tucker really hurts, because if you look back at the film on January 28th of 2023, there was a game where Joel Embiid won the MVP with 3 months left in the regular season. And what the 76ers did was put PJ on Nikola, which then allowed Joel Embiid to roam and defend the rim. So you had this very unique double team, but it's actually very simple. You put a good post defender in Jokic, try to get him off his spots, and you don't let him spin baseline, because when you do, no help. I mean, he's got the rim, he's going to get an easy look every single time.
Yeah.
But if you get him to spin when he's out the post, off of his right shoulder, well, now he's going to be going to the middle of the floor where there's a lot of help. That is where I say to myself, maybe Eric Spoelstra tries Kevin Love to start the games.
See, that was just what I was going to ask you. So, because what's the starting lineup going to be? Because obviously he's implemented Caleb Martin in the last couple games because this kid has just been a spark plug, and it's like, screw that. We don't need him on the bench. We need him to start the goddamn game off making those shots and his physical plays. So do you take him out of the start? Do you take Caleb out of the starting lineup and put in?
I do, to match Bruce Brown off the bench, because the Nuggets, look, they're 6 or 7 guys deep. If Christian Brown's going to play minutes, some days they may, if they're lucky, be 8 guys deep. Bruce Brown's going to run transition as Nuggets will, and so will Caleb Martin. And I think having Kevin Love in the starting lineup with his 3-point shooting in a pick and pop game, having that draw Nikola Jokic away from the paint, out of the rim. Well, I actually think while the Miami Heat defensively may not have an option, a solution to guard Nikola Jokic, I do think offensively, with their actions, whether it's pick and roll, give and go DHOs, or simply post splits with Bam. And the post split, it's one thing the Warriors have always done with Draymond. It's you have Duncan Robinson and Kyle Lowry. Duncan, great cutter, whole cuts to the rim, dives hard. That's the first look for Bam. The second is Cal will pop out for a 3. And that type of frenzy will open up something usually. That will take Nikola Jokic away from the paint with Bam in the mid-range. Now, this postseason, he hasn't shot particularly well from mid-range, as we saw. I mean, his floater game was atrocious versus the Celtics. But Kevin Love has that pick and pop element that we've seen with teams like the Warriors and the Suns. When you can pull Nikola Jokic out into space, it opens up for the Nuggets Pandora's box, because the point of their defense is making sure Nikola Jokic is in the paint with everybody else. MPJ, Gordon, Jamal, he's a really good off-ball help defender. All of those guys are the resistance. And the issue with Denver, it's not getting to the rim. Well, actually, it is. Sorry. The issue with Denver is not scoring out at the rim. It's actually getting there. So if you can beat your guy off the dribble and there's some chaos where maybe Aaron Gordon's rotating and Jokic isn't there as the last line of defense, well, now the Miami Heat has something they can rely on offensively. And I think that is less iso ball, because Aaron Gordon is a tremendous matchup for Jimmy Butler. And I think it's a lot more actions involving Bam where he initiates, and you can see more Kevin Love pick and roll with one of their guards, whether it's Gabe, Kyle, or Jimmy.
Yeah, and so here's the thing that was going through my mind too is So we have two guys on the bench that haven't seen really any playing time for the right reasons. They're not. I don't think they're ready, but there's something about these two guys. We have two 7-footers on the bench, right? You have Yurt 7 and Orlando Robinson, if I'm not mistaken. Does Yurt 7 see any time? Do you think that they can maybe put him in for 2-3 minutes, use up some fouls, create some trouble? Because here's the one thing I would say about that too, and playing Cody Zeller as well. There's no way you can have Bam and either Yurt 7 or Zeller on the court at the same time, because that's two non-shooters, and that's just not going to work offensively. So like you have to have K Love with one of those other guys that we're mentioning, and obviously you don't want to take Bam off the court if he can play 40 plus minutes. You want that from him. So like I said, it's just going to be so interesting. Like if Yurt 7 sees some time just to throw in a 7-footer to bother Jokic. Yeah,
I,
I hope not to see Cody's. I gotta be honest. There's one guy on the Miami Heat. I'm not a fan of Cody Zeller.
yeah, he definitely should not be getting a single minute. But the issue is that Yurtseven last year was really good as a rebounder, and you think, that would be great for Jokic on the offensive glass, and then also just like boxing them out and letting someone else get the board. But the issue was he only played 9 games this season because he had a stress reaction in his ankle,
Yeah,
and he's probably not going to be in the shape to play in a track race. And these are two teams that want to get out in space, and I think he will lag behind while also not being able to open up the floor. So, could we see it? Very slim chance, and I think the best way to go would be leaning on Kevin Love a lot more in this series because, like we saw in the first round of the playoffs versus Giannis and Brook Lopez,
I think
in
that's
certain
the blueprint.
stretches in the Knicks series, what he can unlock for you in the half court is going to be the difference maker.
I think that's the blueprint right there. The Buck series, because they play with two big men. I know Giannis was injured, but when he was on the court, Giannis and Brook Lopez, they play with two big men, and we saw Bam and Kevin Love. And you got Aaron Gordon and Jokic, and hell, even freaking MPJ is 6'10". So you need the big bodies. I do want to say this. I hope, and I think we are going to see more Highsmith. He's shown a lot. Game 6, I know there were a lot of it was garbage time, but even in Game 7, he comes out and he just fights. He just scraps. And I love that. And he's making his shots now. He's feeling confident now. So I want to
And I
see some
expect
more.
that.
Yeah, I want to see some more minutes from that kid. And Duncan Robinson, still loving him.
Mm.
He has become kind of a closer. And why I say that is, if you notice, he's starting the fourth quarter, basically. I think the entire Celtics series, he started the fourth quarter. Last night, him and Kyle Lowry played the entire fourth quarter. But you didn't see Gabe Vincent or Max Strus. So when you got a guy who is that deadly from the three-point line, like I said so many times, and how much attraction he creates from the defense, opens up the game for everybody else. That's why I call him a closer. And he's unlocking even more elements of his game because he's cutting off ball, getting to the rim. I think he got a block shot last night too.
Yeah,
People
a lot of brown shit.
People forget that Duncan Robinson is 6'7" with those long ass arms. So
Let's be real. He's also, in
he's
Game
not
6,
athletic.
part
He's
of why
not
they
getting.
lost is because
He's not jumping.
he's giving up the end ones, and he's also not providing any resistance on drives. But you're right, though. He can make a lot of plays with that length. And I think to your credit, one reason you're very high on Duncan is because it's not what Robinson brings to the three-point shooter. Strus brings that. It's what he does as a connector. And the Lowry to Duncan Robinson bounce passes. In Game 6, you saw the one where he wrapped it around from underneath the rim and Horford was gone. And then yesterday, you saw it where I think it was some sort of pick and roll where Duncan then curls to the rim and Lowry puts a beautifully placed bounce pass right by the outstretched arms of Robert Williams for a dunking finish in the first half of the game. I think it was in the second quarter specifically. And I said to myself, that's a phenomenal pass. But I think Robinson's always been a really good finisher off those actions. A lot like Mikal Bridges when he was in Phoenix. So I don't even want to give a serious prediction. I have the Nuggets winning. What do you think?
What's my serious prediction?
Right.
I'll say this, because I was asked this a couple days ago. Like, Well, no, actually, I wasn't asked this. I asked myself this question. I asked myself this question. Who would I rather see in the finals if I'm a Miami Heat fan? And I said the Denver Nuggets more than the Lakers. But it was not a slight on Denver. It was just what the Lakers what the Lakers can do can hamper what we do a lot. Um, Denver, there's some liabilities defensively that I think we can take advantage that I don't think we would have been able to take advantage of against the Lakers. Like everybody says, styles make fights. Every team matches up differently, but the consensus is Denver is the favorite, that they're going to win. I'm saying Denver in 4, Denver in 5.
It's crazy.
Yeah, if you ask them, they would say it's not crazy, but obviously they haven't been watching this Miami Heat team, right? Because every step of the way we've been counted out. We went through the number 1 seed Bucks. We went through a Knicks team that finally broke through the first round. We went through the 2 seed that was in the finals last year. I'm not counting us out against Denver. And I'm also not going to pick against my team, Heat in 6.
You know, the interesting thing is that many people point out the Nuggets had 10 days of rest, whereas the Heat have 2.5. And I also think if there's anybody that's well equipped to guard Jimmy Butler, it is Aaron Gordon. I mean, this guy guarded LeBron. I've said this, Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker. And Jimmy Butler is not a guy with below by speed like Ant-Man. Aaron Gordon is best defending the post with his lower body, but he's also a guy that never relents. And I think that matchup is going to be the difference maker. Aaron Gordon's not gotten to shine this postseason, but the reason they gave up Gary Harris, a key part of the roster, and a first-round pick, plus RJ Hampton a year ago, was because they thought he was the missing piece to this puzzle. And with what he also brings in transition and as a play finisher, I think we could see him decide the series. I truly think he can be the difference maker. While MPJ's cracking the long ball, Jamal Murray shot 50, 40, 90 in the conference finals. You're right.
Yeah.
Jamal Murray's him.
Right.
And then you've got Bruce Brown off the bench too. But at the crux of it, at the true peak of the Denver Nuggets is when Aaron Gordon is defending at an elite level. And I think that is what excites me the most about this series. Watching two guys that never give up just punch each other again and again for 48 minutes.
Well, listen, it's going to be a fight. Yeah, it's going to be a fight, man. It is. And it's I don't know what to expect. I really don't. It's a tough one. It's a tough one to analyze, a tough one to describe, but all I know is every step of the way the teams we face, from Bucks, Knicks, Celtics, we've all exposed their weaknesses. Now, I don't know if Denver has any weaknesses. I would imagine they do. They're probably hard to find or take advantage of. But if any team can do it, it's this Miami Heat team. So that's it.
I do want to touch to finish off the show. Okay, I said we were going to in the beginning. Bob Myers, after 12 years, is stepping down as the Golden State Warriors executive of basketball operations. And I felt like the response today was actually really weird. There were two different camps. There was camp one that said, this is the end of the Warriors dynasty. There's camp two that said, you look at this guy's draft history, he got James Wiseman. What has he done? And I think there's a misunderstanding. Without Bob Myers, we may not see the greatest team in NBA history. When the Warriors made him the GM in 2012, the 7th overall pick takes Harrison Barnes. But then in the second round, he drafts Draymond Green, pudgy kid that was a winner at Michigan State that turned out to be the best defender since Dwight Howard or Kevin Garnett. He also signed Steph Curry to what was kind of known as like the modern Scottie Pippen contract, right? Pippen was probably the most underpaid superstar of the 20th century. Steph Curry, because of some ankle injuries, was paid $11 million a year up until 2017. They also got Draymond for $17 million a year. That allowed them to sign Kevin Durant. But let's not forget in the process, they also hired Steve Kerr, who in his first year ever as a coach, won a championship. And he went to the finals in every single season up until 2023 that his core three was healthy. Bob Myers also, at the end of his days, drafted, Kevon Looney in 2015, Jordan Poole in 2019. These are late first-round picks, two Michigan boys right there that were key parts of championship teams and are also in their 20s. He also drafted James Wiseman. We can all acknowledge the terrible pick, 2020. But then in 2021, he takes Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga. I know those two guys right now are not like these elite players, but they're also developing, and they've also gotten very little reps. Moses Moody is going to be one of the best 3-and-D wings in the game. He was a top 10 prospect, the guy with the 14th pick. Jonathan Kuminga may not have played much in the playoffs and may have had some attitude issues. He was a top 5 prospect. They got at number 7. Bob Myers is leaving this Warriors team off in great hands, and he's also not handicapping them by trading those young guys away. So the new general manager here, he's going to have the flexibility to move those players or prioritize their development. And I think either way, when you look at the Bob Myers era for the Warriors, it was an unmitigated success. And I think he's one of the most underappreciated and one of the best GMs in NBA history. Because without him, there may not be Kevin Durant, there may not be Steve Kerr, there may not be Draymond Green, and there may not be a dynasty. This guy didn't draft Steph Curry or Klay Thompson, but he did everything else. And when you look at the best organizations in basketball, I think the Warriors are in that discussion because of what they've done the last decade. And that's why he's one of the best GMs to ever do it. And he needs a lot more credit for what they've built and the discourse that I've seen today, which a lot of which is, what has he done? I'm like, you serious? You dead ass?
So you're telling me that this is the guy, that guy Kevin Durant? It's him. He's the guy.
Steph Curry is not making $11 million, and no, they're not going to have the cap space to bring in KD.
No, I'm asking. He's responsible for this.
In order to sign Kevin Durant, they needed to have the cap space. So with the 32% cap spike of 2016, the Warriors also had enough room to give Kevin Durant that 2-year, $50 million deal because Steph Curry and Draymond were both underpaid. And that is a testament to management.
Yeah. So what you're telling me is that Bob Myers is the guy who is responsible for Kevin Durant being in Golden State.
Yes.
Screw Bob Myers, then. He ruined basketball. Screw Bob Myers. Give us one of the worst eras. Give us one of the worst eras in basketball history. Those 2 years were.
It's actually 3.
No, KD was only there for 2 years. Well, the third year they lost.
Yes, but he was a Warrior that year.
It went
and that's a reasonable point. But
yeah,
I just want to give that man some praise because
credit to him, but also screw you for ruining basketball for 2 years.
Okay.
And Kevin Durant for that matter too, because Bob Myers shout out. I just want to mention this. Tonight is the debut of the Ultimate Fighter 31, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. The return of Conor. He's not fighting. Everybody don't get excited. Not yet. But tonight it starts at 10 p.m. on ESPN, the actual channel network, because it's Conor McGregor and he draws, or ESPN Plus. And it's just going to be, I'm tuning in on a weekly basis. Love Conor, entertainer. He's a must-see TV in my opinion. So I'm just excited to see. Apparently, they're going to announce the date of the fight between Chandler and McGregor during the show. I don't know if it's probably not going to be episode 1, but Dana has already said that it's going to be announced during the show. So I'm excited for that. It's rumored that it's going to be in December, probably in Vegas. I'm just pumped up because McGregor, we're just inching back slowly to Conor McGregor's return. And like I've always said, the sport of MMA, the company of the UFC is better when Conor McGregor is fighting.
You heard it here first. With all that being said, I'll wrap up episode 107 Wise Guys Podcast. We will see you on Thursday, hours ahead of the NBA Finals. Thank you so much for watching. Staying at the very end. If you haven't already, drop a like and stream, man. And also subscribe if you enjoy content like this. It's important to mention, if you'd like to support the channel even further, you can check out our Patreon account, submit Q&A questions. You can chat with us, any sport you want, and much more. But even so, while you get to join the Discord, we're thinking about maybe having a couple of supporters onto the show down the line. So be sure to check out the Patreon if you're interested. With all that being said, thank you for watching, staying to the very end. As always, till next time.
Miami Heat, I'm proud of you. Stay classy.